There's a specific kind of confidence people develop when they believe no one will ever hold them responsible. It's more than simple arrogance. It's a sense of security, the kind built over years of bending rules, crossing lines, and watching everyone around them stay quiet instead of pushing back. HOAs thrive on that mindset because most homeowners never challenge them. Most people just pay the penalties, obey the regulations, avoid attention, and pray they don't end up becoming the next example. I wasn't like most people, and that quickly turned into a serious issue for them. It all began with a storm, and not a mild one either. It was the kind that arrives without warning, paints the sky an ugly greenish gray, and leaves destruction behind that takes weeks to repair. Torrential rain, violent winds strong enough to snap tree limbs, flood low ground, and force water into places it was never supposed to reach. My property lies downhill from a line of lake houses connected to an HOA. Technically, my land isn't part of their association. I owned the property long before their neighborhood was ever developed. Even though their houses sit overlooking the same lake, the drainage systems, service roads, and several shared utility paths all pass directly through my land. That detail became extremely important because, while they got to enjoy the scenery, I was the one forced to handle the runoff. Under normal conditions, it was manageable. Drainage channels had been installed years earlier to safely carry excess water across my property and into the lower basin beyond. But during that storm, something failed, and it failed badly. Once the rain finally passed, I went outside to inspect the damage and immediately realized this wasn't ordinary storm destruction. The main drainage channel, the one carrying water from the lake houses through my property and down toward the basin, was completely blocked, not by leaves or fallen branches, but by construction debris, gravel, broken concrete, pieces of lumber, materials that had obviously been dumped there either deliberately or through pure negligence. And because that channel had been obstructed, all of the storm water had nowhere left to flow. Instead, it spilled backward onto my land, flooding large sections of my yard, tearing apart sections of fencing, weakening the foundation beneath my storage shed, and worst of all, washing out a major portion of the access road that crosses my property, the exact same road those lake house owners depended on to reach their homes. I stood there ankle-deep in mud staring at the destruction while that slow, familiar anger started building in my chest, because I already knew exactly where all that debris had come from. The HOA had spent weeks carrying out upgrades around the lakefront homes, renovations, landscaping projects, and who knows what other work. Apparently, instead of paying to dispose of the waste properly, they decided the drainage channel on my property was the perfect dumping ground. I documented every bit of it, photographs, videos, measurements, all of it. Then I contacted a contractor. The estimate arrived 2 days later, $128,500. That total covered clearing the blocked drainage channel, repairing the erosion damage, rebuilding the destroyed sections of road, and restoring my fence and storage shed. It wasn't a minor expense, but it certainly wasn't my responsibility either. So I did the reasonable thing. I sent the HOA the invoice together with a full explanation, photographs of the destruction, and a direct request for reimbursement. I even gave them the benefit of the doubt. I presented it like a situation we could settle quickly, professionally, and without turning it into something bigger. Their response arrived a week later. One letter, brief, emotionless, and completely dismissive. They rejected all responsibility, claimed the storm was simply an unavoidable act of nature, and suggested the damage fell within the normal risks of owning rural property. And my favorite part, they tried implying that maintaining the drainage channel was somehow my responsibility. I read that letter twice, then a third time just to make sure I hadn't misunderstood something. I hadn't. They genuinely believed they could dump construction waste onto my property, cause well over $100,000 in damage, and simply walk away without consequences. No attempt to negotiate, no partial payment, nothing. That was the moment I stopped trying to be reasonable. Because here's what the HOA either failed to understand or intentionally ignored: that access road. The same one destroyed in the flooding. The same road every lake house owner used daily. Runs completely through my property, and I only maintained it because it had always been convenient for everyone involved, not because I was legally required to. There was no easement, No written agreement. No contract guaranteeing access. Just years of informal use built on mutual benefit and common understanding. Until that moment, I'd never had any reason to reconsider that arrangement. Now I did. The very next morning, I called a contractor again, not to start repairs, but to install barriers. By the end of that same day, 2 heavy-duty steel gates had been mounted, one at the entrance of the access road, and another farther down near the turnoff leading toward the lake houses. Both gates stood entirely on my property. Both were fully legal, and both were locked securely. I also installed several large signs. Private road, no unauthorized access. Then I waited. It didn't take very long. By late afternoon, my phone started ringing. Unknown numbers at first, then a few familiar ones. Lake house owners confused, irritated, and increasingly angry. Some tried being polite, others absolutely didn't. Hey, I think there's been some kind of misunderstanding. There's a gate blocking the road. No misunderstanding. I answered. You can't just cut off access. People live here. That's when the HOA board finally contacted me directly. Not respectfully either. They came in making demands. You need to unlock those gates immediately. One of them snapped. I don't need to do anything. I replied calmly. You're blocking access to multiple homes. No, I said, I'm securing private property. They didn't appreciate that response at all. Over the next 24 hours, the situation escalated fast. Residents suddenly couldn't drive to their homes anymore. Package deliveries were turned away. Contractors and service vehicles couldn't get through. And suddenly, the same HOA that had brushed aside my $128,500 repair invoice was facing a very real and very immediate crisis of its own. They threatened lawsuits. I practically invited them to try because, unlike them, I had documentation, records tied to their construction work, evidence of the damage,